Viewing these periods of Bahá'í history as the constituents of a single entity, we note the chain of events proclaiming successfully the rise of a forerunner, the mission of one whose advent that forerunner had promised, the establishment of a covenant generated through the direct authority of the promised one himself, and lastly, the birth of a system, which is the child sprung from both the author of the covenant and its appointed center. We observe how the Bab, the forerunner, announced the impending inception of a divinely conceived order, how Bahá'u'lláh, the promised one, formulated its laws and ordinances, how Abdu'l-Bahá, the appointed center, delineated its features, and how the present generation of their followers have commenced to erect the framework of its institutions. We watch through these periods the infant light of the faith diffuse itself from its cradle, eastward to India and the Far East, westward to the neighboring territories of Iráq, of Turkey, of Russia, and of Egypt, travel as far as the North American continent, illuminate subsequently the major countries of Europe, envelop with its radiance at a later stage the Antipodes, brighten the fringes of the Arctic, and finally set aglow the Central and Southern American horizons. We witness a corresponding increase in the diversity of the elements within its fellowship, which, from being confined in the first period of its history to an obscure body of followers chiefly recruited from the ranks of the masses in Shí'ah Persia, has expanded into a fraternity representative of the leading religious systems of the world, of almost every caste and color, from the humblest worker and peasant to royalty itself. We notice a similar development in the extent of its literature, a literature which, restricted at first to the narrow range of hurriedly transcribed, often corrupted, secretly circulated manuscripts, so furtively perused, so frequently effaced, and at times even eaten by the terrorized members of a proscribed sect, has, within the space of a century, swelled into innumerable editions comprising tens of thousands of printed volumes in diverse scripts and in no less than 40 languages, some elaborately reproduced, others profusely illustrated, all methodically and vigorously disseminated through the agency of worldwide, properly constituted and specially organized committees and assemblies. We perceive a no less apparent evolution in the scope of its teachings, at first designedly rigid, complex, and severe, subsequently recast, expanded, and liberalized under the succeeding dispensation, later expounded, reaffirmed, and amplified by an appointed interpreter, and lastly systematized and universally applied to both individuals and institutions. We can discover a no less distinct gradation in the character of the opposition it has had to encounter, an opposition at first kindled in the bosom of Shí'ah Islám, which, at a later stage, gathered momentum with the banishment of Bahá'u'lláh to the domains of the Turkish Sultán, and the consequent hostility of the more powerful Sunni hierarchy and its caliph, the head of the vast majority of the followers of Muhammad, an opposition which now, through the rise of a divinely appointed order in the Christian West, and its initial impact on civil and ecclesiastical institutions, bids fair to include among its supporters established governments and systems associated with the most ancient, the most deeply entrenched sacerdotal hierarchies in Christendom. We can, at the same time, recognize, through the haze of an ever-widening hostility, the progress, painful yet persistent, of certain communities within its pale, through the stages of obscurity, of proscription, of emancipation, and of recognition. Stages that must needs culminate in the course of the succeeding centuries in the establishment of the faith and the founding, in the plenitude of its power and authority, of the world-embracing Bahá'í Commonwealth. We can likewise discern a no less appreciable advance in the rise of its institutions, whether as administrative centers or places of worship, institutions clandestine and subterrene in their earliest beginnings, emerging imperceptibly into the broad daylight of public recognition, legally protected, enriched by pious endowments, ennobled at first by the erection of the Mashri'ql-Adhkár of Ishqábád, the first Bahá'í House of Worship, and more recently immortalized through the rise in the heart of the North American continent of the Mother Temple of the West, the forerunner of a slowly maturing civilization. And finally, we can even bear witness to the marked improvement in the conditions surrounding the pilgrimages performed by its devoted adherents to its consecrated shrines at its world center. Pilgrimages, originally arduous, perilous, tediously long, often made on foot, at times ending in disappointment, and confined to a handful of harassed Oriental followers, gradually attracting, under steadily improving circumstances of security and comfort, an ever-swelling number of new converts, converging from the four corners of the globe and culminating in the widely publicized, yet sadly frustrated visit of a noble queen who, at the very threshold of the city of her heart's desire, was compelled, according to her own written testimony, to divert her steps and forego the privilege of so priceless a benefit.